Hi everyone, and welcome to our video on functions and mathematical relationships. Okay, so probably the most simple function that we will see are linear functions, and hopefully this setup looks kind of easy, or it looks familiar at least, but you might be familiar with y equals mx plus b. There will be situations, especially in unit 1, where we talk about a function like this, and we have, again, it's linear, so I'll try to draw a straight line here. It's as good as I can do. Okay, so just a couple things here. Remember that b, like this point here, b is your y-intercept, okay? And then m is your slope. So whatever this angle is here, that's m, right? And remember that m, that's your slope. Slope is equal to rise over run. Okay. Another way that we can kind of view that is if you knew two values about, where your object was, or if we were tracking like a particle's position, right? We would want to be able to look at, a second position and a first position and be able to kind of compare those two things or something like that, right? But we want to do like y2 minus y1 over x2, x2 minus x1. Okay. The other major one that we want to address are quadratic functions. And, in this situation, I didn't use x. I used t because I feel like this is one that we're going to see in the beginning of the year when we talk about, like tracking a particle. This is a situation where we might have time. And I want to mention that now because in my example here, time is an interesting situation here. So let's say we have a quadratic. So I'll try to draw a quadratic here. And let's say we have something that kind of looks like, oh boy, let's see how well I can do this. Something like that. Okay, fine. And then, right, so one thing we can do is we can try to solve this depending on, what numbers we're given. But one situation or one thing that you might be familiar with is the this function here. Okay, so you might be familiar with this equation. And the whole point is to kind of solve for t. Now, notice that this is a plus or minus. So that means that you might get two answers. And the reason why I bring this up is because you might get two answers, but only one of them will make sense. So for example, let's say you solve for this and let's say you get, negative 1.5 and you also get, 3.8 or something like that. I don't know, I'm just making something up. But one thing to kind of watch out for here is that only one of these will make sense. You can't have negative time. So that one is not going to be our answer. Our answer is actually going to be 3.8. All right, so watch out for that. Watch out for the fact that time is not negative. Okay. And so that's going to help us solve for t. All right, and then one thing I want to mention here is the types of relationships that you'll see. So we talked about linear, we talked about quadratic. There are a couple others that we'll see. We'll see inverse relationships where like y is proportional to 1 over x. We'll also see situations that y might be proportional to 1 over x squared. And sometimes it's really hard to tell those two apart. When you look at these two equations here, like this slope, right, isn't that much different from this slope, especially by eye, or especially if you're just looking at, a few data points. So that's one thing to kind of watch out for is that sometimes your relationship is inverse, sometimes it's inverse squared. And we'll try to point out, which situation we're dealing with. Okay, we'll stop there, and our next video is going to be about vectors.